It is time for my March wrap-up. I probably should have split this into 2 videos, but like halfway through the month, I didn't think I was going to have read enough to need to make 2 videos, and I ended up reading like 14 books. So let's get right into everything I read this month, and then we'll go over kind of what my plans are for April and what my video plans are going to be for the next couple weeks. I started the month off with John D. MacDonald. You guessed it. I read The Brass Cupcake, and The Brass Cupcake is fine. It's not a Travis McGee novel because, of course, I finished all of those. You can tell it's his debut novel. It came out in 1950, and it feels like a lot of what was in it was there to get published. And then there's also this streak of domestic violence going on in the book from like both sides of the relationships, and it's mean-spirited. I mentioned that when my wife and I were doing the John D. MacDonald unboxing. The story is about a former cop who got ran off the force for being too honest in this Florida resort town, and he went into the private business of insurance investigations for a company that insures jewelry. So he will find the stolen jewelry, buy it from the thieves for less than the policy, and then, he gets a little cut of that and all that. Well, this one starts off with him getting a job to find the jewelry of a woman who had been murdered, a very wealthy woman from Boston, and the cops don't want anyone else investigating it. The criminal organizations in the city don't want anyone else investigating it, and so he is not only trying to avoid the cops and the mob boss in town, but he's trying to get this solved, and he pulls in help from the niece of the murdered woman, and it's very interesting. I think one of the best things about it is the twist is really good, and the end is completely unexpected. It really builds a lot more of what's going to be happening in the future in that place, even though there's not a sequel, than you would have expected. Overall, the book is pretty good. It's not going to hold up to the same standard as Travis McGee, and at times I was kind of bored with it, but what really brought it back to being a pretty good book was the ending. I really enjoyed the last third. The first third's good. The middle's just kind of strange, and like I said, there's a weird domestic violence stuff. And after that, I read Batman the Cult, the graphic novel or collection of comics. I don't know the terminology for them. This was fantastic. As I'm going through this, I'll probably post art along with the cover. This was written by Jim Starlin, drawn by Bernie Wrightson, and colored by Bill Ray. This book is very good. The whole premise is Batman ends up getting injured and captured by this cult, and they brainwash him. And this is a death cult that's trying to take over Gotham. They're killing criminals. They're trying to get people on their side, and they're led by a really, really charismatic Charles Manson, who is like more preacher than crazy hippie. It's really strange. I had a lot of fun with it, and I highly recommend it. The art fits perfect. It gets all weird and funky when Batman is having psychotic breakdowns, and then it kind of tightens up the more sane he becomes, which I really appreciated, and I didn't notice it until about halfway through them. Of course, I think the ending is like, it feels rushed, but I'm willing to, give it a break because it's a 4-issue graphic novel, so you can't expect the same kind of plotting or pacing as you would an actual novel or a very long graphic novel. I really liked it. It's definitely one of those like Batman all-time classic graphic novels. Definitely go check that out. Then I read The Doomed Oasis by Hammond Innes. I made a video about this. This book is not good. I picked it up just because it looked cool. I really liked the cover. I read the description of the book and I thought, this sounds interesting. A Welsh lawyer who goes to Saudi Arabia to figure out what happened to this guy he's missing. He's like 20 something years old. The book is a mess. It's so boring. There were some things I liked, and then other things I'm like, why does this exist in this book? If you really want an in-depth rant about the book, and I spoiled the whole thing because it's not worth reading, but it's fun to talk about, go check out the video. I don't recommend it at all. I read a couple of my 40 before 40 books in March, and one of them was The Baseball 100 by Joe Posnanski. Initially, I was kind of chipping away at it, and then I just powered through it because it is amazing. It is my book of the month. It is probably going to be my nonfiction book of the year. Yes, this is very early to say that, but holy crap, was this an absolute banger. So what Joe Posnanski did was he picked out his 100 greatest baseball players of all time. He had a few metrics. I'm going to try to remember them. I have notes somewhere, but I don't know what happened to him. And what he did was he went with WAR, which is wins above replacement, and that is a cumulative stat that kind of adds up your quality as a player, like how much better you are than the basic replacement level player for your position. And then he did peak WAR, so if you had like a 5-year stretch where you were literally the best player in the game, he factored that in. And then he does impacts on and off the field, kind of how they matter to baseball, who they are as a person. And then there's a couple of other metrics which I don't want to get into because I forgot them and they don't really matter as much because they're kind of minor. The book is amazing. I'm not going to spoil who number one is because, I mean, what's the point? The way he placed the players is usually done by those metrics, but some of them were done in a way that just kind of makes sense for that player. He put Jackie Robinson at number 42 because that was his jersey number and it has been retired by Major League Baseball because he's that important to the sport. Another one is he put Joe DiMaggio at number 56 because that was the 56 consecutive games where he got a hit. Fun fact about that, and he talks about it in the book, that same year that DiMaggio did that, he won MVP, but Ted Williams had a better season. If you look at that 56 game streak where he was an absolute monster, just always getting on base, Ted Williams' season was just about that good, or better. It's absurd. The cool thing about this book is not only does he give you a very cool summary of all of these amazing players, each player's story is wonderful. He kind of picks a little thing and hones in on it and kind of builds out from there. It could be Lefty Grove, where it's talking about left-handed pitchers and his origin and then how he became what he became. And it is just such a great read. It made me fall in love with baseball even more than I already was. I've been obsessed with baseball since, I don't know, like 2012. And by obsessed, I mean, holy crap, I've become that annoying person that when someone brings it up, they're like, oh, I regret talking about this because he knows too much and he won't stop talking. I'm very obsessed with baseball. And this book just rekindled all of that obsession to a whole new level. It makes me appreciate the sport so much more. If you ever read just one baseball book, it should be this one. It's so good. You can pick away at it, just kind of pick a player you're interested in. And one of the best things he did in this book was how many Negro League players he put in it. It's so wonderful to get all of these stories I knew nothing about. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I love baseball. I'm obsessed with baseball, but it's so hard to find good sources about the Negro Leagues, and the fact that he has them through here because they deserve to be on this list as some of the greatest players of all time. It's just such a great service to the baseball community. I loved every second of it. I can't recommend the book enough. Definitely go check it out. Now, we all know that my project for this year is Lois McMaster Bujold. Unfortunately, I only read 2 Bujold books in March, which I got to bump those numbers up because I think I have another 43 to go for the year. I'm not sure. I hope that's not true because I don't know if I can do that. Oh well, math is hard and this is a booktube channel. I read The Orphans of Raspay by Lois McMaster Bujold, which is one of the Penrick and Desdemona novellas. It is wonderful. When I initially read it, I was like, oh yeah, this is good. It's kind of up there with the best, but I don't think it's top tier. I changed my mind. The more I think about it, the more I fall in love with that book. The story starts with Penrick getting captured by pirates with these 2 orphan girls who he's trapped in like a little containment area on the pirate ship, and he's kind of helping them feel better. They're scared. He finds out they're orphans. They were actually going to be sent somewhere to be taken care of, and then, you know, they get kidnapped by these pirates too. Well, the pirates are slavers and they get to this island that is a like merchant city. It's more like a little town, and it happens to be mostly controlled by the pirates because that's really the only way they get any income and stuff. Penrick is of course hiding that he is a sorcerer, and the whole story revolves around him trying to get out with the girls. It's beautiful. Of course it's beautiful. It's a Penrick and Desdemona novella. The ending is just one of those things that shows off how good Lois McMaster Bujold is with writing just feelings, just being good people and really caring about others. And it's magnificent. It always is. I mean, what do you want from me? I've already told you how good these books are. Everyone needs to go read them. And for my reread of the month, I read On Target, which is book 2 in the Gray Man series by Mark Greaney. My wife and I are going to read all of them this year. I've read them all already, but she's reading them for the first time, so I'm working my way through with her. And this one is when Mark Greaney has really started to hit his stride. Yeah, book 2, he's already starting to hit his stride. You get Gray Man as you kind of see him through the rest of the series in full form here. I think this book has some pacing issues, and holy crap, I forgot almost everything in this book. I remembered this big shootout scene that takes place in a rural town. And one of the reasons I remembered it is because I know Mark Greaney did some firearms training, and one of the big training things involved that fight that takes place in there. Like, you're in vehicles, you get out, you're dragging injured people, you're doing all sorts of things, and it's to train you to be good at using live weapons around other people without harming yourself or the other people you are fighting with. And so I remember that scene. It's very well done, of course, because he literally trained for it in real life and then kind of translated it over. The book takes place in Sudan. And I forgot how big of a deal Sudan was at the time. Like, I didn't forget that Sudan was a big deal, but when he wrote this book, it was all over the news. And one of the things he's always done is he's had to do a little guesswork. He tries to write his books in a way that when they get published, they are very relevant to what's going on at the time. And most of the time he gets it right. He definitely did this time. The Gray Man ends up in Darfur and all sorts of just wild stuff ensues. He rescues this one woman who was way out of her element. Bad things were going to happen. He's basically given a mission where he has to work with someone that was part of the group that burned him initially when it came to the CIA. So that's interesting. That guy is quite the character, and he will be very important as the series moves on. So looking forward to reading more and watching kind of how he grows as a character. It was cool to see him for the first time, because later in the month I read Midnight Black, which I'll talk about when I get to it, the newest book in the Gray Man series. And so yeah, On Target, great. It's not one of the best Gray Man novels, but none of them are bad, and this just happens to be in the middle. As part of my arbitrary goal of 20% of my books I read this year being nonfiction, I read Summer of Fire and Blood, The German Peasants War by Lyndall Roper. This is about the German Peasants War from 1525. If you don't know what that is, then you probably don't care about the book. The book is very well researched, very well written. It does not hold back when it talks about the brutalities of that time. This whole thing was about peasants rising up about freedom to go on what is essentially public lands, except at the time they weren't very public, and the ability for people to be free. It talks about liberty and stuff, but not in the 18th and 19th century forms of liberty like you see in the US and France and then the rest of the Western world. It was more about literally freedom from being attached to a place as a serf, and freedom to, I don't know, go get your own food from the woods that no one owns except, they kind of do, or you're not allowed to use them, but other people are. It's really interesting. I will say it was like above my intellectual pay grade. Some of it went way over my head. Maybe if I was German and I had a better grasp on the history, it would have been even better, but it's still a very good book, and I got a lot out of it. But like I said, if you don't know what the German Peasants War is, then you probably don't care. Got right back to some Lois McMaster Bujold after that, and I read The Physicians of Ilnock. This one is very good. Not one of the best. It is about a plague that breaks out in the military town that's near where Penrick lives. His brother-in-law comes into town and is like, hey, you have to come with me right now. We've got a serious thing going on. And this is about Penrick struggling to be the doctor that he does not want to be. He was trained as a physician, and it just about destroyed him. He puts too much of himself into saving others to the point that it nearly kills him. And that is why he's not a doctor. But in here, he has to be. There's no other option. And it's beautiful. I do wonder about this book. It came out toward the end of 2020. Was this a COVID book? Because it feels like someone living through COVID with this plague that you don't know what's going on. You don't know where it came from. It's killing people and you have no idea how to stop it. And it's just terrifying. So maybe it was a COVID book. Very good one. I decided to read some historical lit fic. Yes, that type of thing I read all the time. It was actually a recommendation from Bridger at the Library Ladder, and that was The Leopard by Giuseppe Tomasi di Lampedusa. Hope I said that right. It is a historical fiction novel that takes place in the 1800s when Italy is transitioning to a complete country and not these little kingdoms. It's very good. I see why people like it as much as they do, but it is not for me. I can appreciate the mastery of the writing, but your boy needs a plot. This is about as lit fic as you can get, and I just don't think that's my cup of tea. I have some lit fic that I absolutely love. The picaresque novel is my favorite subgenre in fiction, and almost all of it is lit fic, but this just isn't for me. I think if you are a fan of historical fiction and you want to read some very important literary fiction from Italy, you should start with this. You will appreciate it, but yeah, it just really wasn't for me. Speaking of things not for me, I read another book on my 40 before 40 list. Not book because I listed a series, but that was Guardians of the Flame by Joel Rosenberg. I read The Sleeping Dragon and The Sword and the Chain by Joel Rosenberg. That's book 1 and book 2 in the series. I made a video about it. It's the first lit RPG series ever written. Quag Keep being the first lit RPG book, but it didn't get a sequel until 2006, and this entire Guardians of the Flame series was written between those two, so I think it's the first series. Anyways, don't read it unless you're into reading about way too much slavery in an economy that doesn't make sense, bad characters, poor plotting, and assault on women, because, you know, it's a fantasy book from the 1980s, so of course women had to be assaulted. The juice ain't worth the squeeze, let's put it that way. I did hear that the third book is on par with the first book, which I liked more than the second book, but I don't think it's worth digging into, even though I own some really cool copies. After that, I needed a palate cleanse, and so I went for something kind of off the wall, but fits into some of my other interests. I had a project a couple years ago where I read at least one book from every author on Appendix N. Well, that was the Gary Gygax Appendix N from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition. Well, in the Moldvay edition of D&D, which is D&D Basic, he had his own list, and that list is just a better version of the original Appendix N. It has some things that were not on the original list, sometimes as an accidental omission, or others because Gygax hadn't read it yet. To make a long story short, Appendix N is a list of the books that inspired the creation of D&D. So it works as a really good foundation for learning about classic fantasy and science fiction. You can start with Appendix N and you get a really good grasp on that era of speculative fiction, and then you can branch out from there. This took a really long time for me to say. I read The House on the Borderland by William Hope Hodgson. Jake at Pulp Mortem has a review of it. I will share that in the description. It is very good, both the book and his review. I really liked it. William Hope Hodgson really reminds me of Lord Dunsany and Clark Ashton Smith with like a tiny dash of H. Rider Haggard. It's very good. He's a writer that I've wanted to read for quite a while now, to the point that I picked up some Nightshade book collections of his. Those will be in a book haul at some point when I finally accumulate enough books to do a book haul, because I'm balling on a budget for a while, so it might take some time for me to get a good book haul going. I say that as I look at 6 books sitting on my desk that I could probably make a haul of. The House on the Borderland, very good. I highly recommend it. It's a short book. There is a stretch of like some weird psychedelic thing going on where he's like off to see the death of the universe, and then he comes back to his body, and it's very strange, but what do you expect? The cool thing about William Hope Hodgson is his writing straddles the end of Gothic horror and the beginning of cosmic horror. You know, Gothic horror of the 1800s and then the cosmic horror of the early 1900s. He's basically kind of right between both, and he's like, hey, what if I do this thing that everyone's been doing, but I start thinking about all this really trippy stuff about the universe too, and I'll put them together. So definitely check it out. It's one of the highlights of my month, just because it's something I've really wanted to read for a while, and it did not disappoint. After that, I decided to try something that had been recommended to me, and I'd seen it other places, and I thought, you know, let's get into this. A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. I didn't realize this won a Hugo Award in 2020 for Best Novel, but I can see why. It ticks all of the boxes for not what I would call award bait, but it really seems like it's exactly what most people voting on those things is looking for in science fiction. Not that that's a bad thing. A Memory Called Empire is about a giant galactic empire that is a cross between the Byzantine Empire and the Aztec Empire, and it is seen through an outsider. And one of the reasons this was recommended to me is because this outsider has the memories of their predecessor in a chip that is now kind of mingled into their brain, in kind of the same way that Penrick and Desdemona do in Lois McMaster Bujold's series. So I thought, oh yeah, that can be interesting. And there is kind of an overlay between those two in the way the avatar interacts with the main character. But what this is about is an outsider who's obsessed with this culture, coming into it as a diplomat, and now they have to figure out who killed their predecessor, who they didn't know was murdered until they get there and see the body. And it's just very interesting. You see this empire on like the verge of collapse, and just weird things going on in this undercurrent, and she's trying to kind of figure everything out. And it's very good, but man, it really lagged at the beginning to the point that I almost DNF'd it. But the last 25 to 30% of this book is amazing. It is a straight up banger. I had such a great time. I'm glad that I kind of toughed out the parts that I didn't enjoy as much, because while I do really like science fiction, I don't think this is the science fiction I like, but it worked out in the end, and I had a really good time. To finish off the month, I read Midnight Black by Mark Greaney, the 14th book in the Gray Man series. It was amazing. It is one of those very important books in the series where you see like a major turning point for Court, not only as a character, but as the world has changed around him. The last time I remember really big changes is around like Deadeye, where spy tech has outpaced spy craft and the gray man has to learn to adapt. And this one feels more like an emotional turning point for Court, and things have changed. There's a very big change in this book, not only for Court, but for the kind of international intelligence and assassination community as a whole. It's really good. The book takes place in Russia. It starts with Court trying to get into Russia to save someone, and he is determined to the point that he's almost crossing lines that he normally does not. He's not like murking good people or anything, but he's a little more brutal in this than normal, and it is so freaking cool. Literally the first kind of action scene going on in the book, I was like, holy crap, did that seriously just happen? It's so good. Mark Greaney is a master of writing these spy action thrillers or whatever they are. This has a very hopeful tone for things that have been going on in Russia in a way that it doesn't really feel like we have in the world. Like I said earlier, he's always trying to be on the cutting edge of what's going to happen, and boy do I hope what happened in here actually happens. It would be very refreshing to get some good news when it comes to international wars. This was one heck of a month. I had a couple of stinkers, but I brought those on to myself. I should have known better, but I'm not sad that I read them. The thing with the Doomed Oasis is I took a chance on a book with a cool cover and a cool idea, and I knew nothing about it, and very few people have reviewed it, and it wasn't good, but I learned from it. The same goes for The Sleeping Dragon and The Sword and the Chain. It's the first lit RPG series ever written. It's not going to be the best, but it was interesting to kind of see where things started, and now we're going to see where they're going, because let's talk about my TBR. I'm going to read Dungeon Crawler Carl the first weekend in April, and if it's good, I'm going to binge the entire series in April. So we will see where lit RPGs were going after things like Guardians of the Flame. I'm currently reading pretentious nonfiction title incoming, Playing at the World, a history of simulating wars, people, and fantastic adventure from chess to role-playing games by John Peterson. Holy crap, that is a lot. This is the first edition. There is a 2E that has been split into 2 books. I wanted to read the first edition and then check out the second edition because I don't know why it was split into 2 books, and it feels weird because the first one is like D&D and then the second one is kind of everything else, but what is the point of learning about D&D without the context of how it came into being, because it's kind of what the whole book is built around. So this is the next level up from all of the history of D&D stuff I've read and history of the tabletop industry, the stuff written by Shannon Appelkline. This is a little more dense. John Peterson is a genius. He does such a good job of writing in a way that is not only easy to read, but feels good in the way he's communicating all this stuff to you, but it is a lot. Like a whole lot. I'm really liking it, but it's like very slow to read. I feel like I read so much, and then I look at my Kobo and it's like, you've read 1%. And it's like, bro, this is killing me. It feels like one chapter is 1% of the entire book. It's a lot. Other than that, I got to keep chipping away at my Bujold project, and so I'm going to finish the Assassins of Thassalon. I started it yesterday, but my brain just refused to focus, so I only got about 15% of the way through it. It's very good, and I don't want to have my lack of focus ruin my enjoyment of the book, so I had to take a break. I'll pick it up again sometime soon, and then I'm going to read Knot of Shadows. Oh, by the way, The Assassins of Thassalon is not a Penrick and Desdemona novella. It is a Penrick and Desdemona novel. So it's the first big boy one. It's by big boy, it's like, I don't know, 9 hours on audio, 300 pages or so in print. But yeah, it is a novel and not a novella. And like I said, I'll be doing Knot of Shadows as well, which is a novella. It's a little baby book. Other than that, I don't know what I'm going to be reading for the rest of April. It really depends on how much of April is consumed by Dungeon Crawler Carl. And if it is, there probably won't be much more. I think I'll try to squeeze in another nonfiction book if I can get Playing at the World done in a reasonable amount of time. And when it comes to the channel, I have a script written for a video about Frederick Brown because I think he is one of the most important genre fiction writers that no one reads anymore. He's the king of horror flash fiction. He's written a ton of great crime novels, mystery stories, science fiction. He's very important. He's on Appendix N, all that good stuff. I've got a overview of his works coming out and kind of where you should start and why he's important, and I'll probably be getting that out in the next week or so check that out. And beyond that, I really don't know what I'm doing. I've got a very big project I want to do, actually 2 of them, so I kind of have to decide which one I want to do first. One is about comic books and the other is about a genre that most people don't define correctly, and we'll be getting into that in the video. Let me know in the comments what you read this month, or if you read anything that I read this month. Overall, the month was very good. Yeah, I read some stinkers, stinkers, but I learned a lot from those stinkers, so I'm not going to, you know, be too upset about reading a couple turds. They were short books too, so it's okay. But that's it. Thanks for watching. And with that, I'll see you next time.